They picked someone else over you. But right now, three profound truths are surfacing in their consciousness that will leave you stunned. If this message reached you today, understand something crucial. This is no coincidence. The universe has aligned this moment for a specific reason. That bond you experienced wasn't imaginary. You didn't fabricate those emotions in your mind. And you were never excessive or overwhelming. The reality is painful but simple. They selected another person. They departed while you remained present, clutching onto possibility with trembling hands. The pain cut deeper than words could ever capture for anyone listening. Yet here's what rarely gets acknowledged. When someone turns toward a different path, it doesn't signal their feelings vanished. Sometimes it reveals they felt terrified of the intensity. At this very moment, whether they're willing to confess it or not, something fundamental is transforming within them. Three significant revelations are emerging from their deepest self to yours, truths they might never articulate openly, yet you deserve to understand them clearly. Pay close attention now. Truth 1. I selected them, yet your presence never faded. They assumed selecting another would erase their memories of what you shared. They convinced themselves a fresh start, different routines, and new chemistry would eliminate what existed between you. Except it failed completely, because authentic soul connections cannot be forgotten through willpower alone. Even in this moment you surface during their unguarded hours. Midnight reflections, dawn awakenings, unexpected locations they never anticipated. Something triggers the memory of you. Your distinctive laughter, your precise words, how you comprehended them without lengthy explanations required. They compare constantly, even while resisting the urge. Here's the revelation that might astonish you. The person they selected never actually replaced your position. They merely created distance from the ache of your absence. You weren't simply another choice on their list. You represented a depth of connection that overwhelmed their capacity to process. The burden of choosing elsewhere while emotions for you persisted. It crushes them with guilt they'll never publicly acknowledge. Truth 2. I feared our potential future together. This component rarely receives honest discussion in these situations. They didn't abandon the relationship because the bond felt weak or insignificant. They fled because the strength terrified them beyond measure. With you, everything registered as authentic, profound, demanding, in ways that required genuine evolution. You witnessed dimensions of their character others never perceived. You reflected realities they weren't prepared to confront about themselves. Rather than elevating to match your energy, they retreated towards something requiring less effort, something predictable, something demanding zero emotional bravery. Selecting someone else wasn't rooted in genuine affection. It stemmed from pure fear. Fear surrounding commitment, vulnerability exposure, surrendering control over their protected heart. They rationalized repeatedly, this path makes better sense. This choice feels more practical. This route offers less resistance. Except their authentic emotions never aligned with that calculated logic. Now they're discovering something agonizing. Effortless connections don't equal meaningful fulfillment. Protected doesn't translate to correct. That awareness is silently devastating them from within. Truth 3. Your absence revealed my tremendous loss. This message carries the heaviest significance of all. Only after you withdrew, only once your energy ceased extending toward them, did comprehension strike regarding your irreplaceable value. Your absence resonates with greater volume than your presence ever achieved, while you remained accessible. They miss how you genuinely cared, how you actively listened, how your belief in them persisted during their moments of self-doubt. Here's the unexpected component. Your silence makes them feel observed and exposed. Not because you're performing any action, but because your personal development highlights their complete stagnation. You're experiencing genuine healing. You're cultivating authentic strength. You're discovering how to prioritize your own worth. They perceive this transformation occurring. They sense the possibility that access to you might be permanently revoked, that the entrance they assumed would remain perpetually available might finally be closing shut. This terrifies them profoundly because subconsciously they recognize you were extraordinary, and extraordinary connections never appear twice in one lifetime. Critical understanding you must internalize. This message isn't instructing you to wait patiently. It's not requesting you pursue them desperately, and it's certainly not guaranteeing reconciliation will occur. It's reminding you of something incredibly powerful about this entire situation. You were never the person who lost something valuable here. They lost someone who offered authentic care, someone completely genuine, someone capable of profound devotion. You lost someone incapable of choosing you during the moment that mattered most. And that distinction changes absolutely everything about this narrative. If they eventually return, it will manifest because understanding finally arrived. If they never reappear, it confirms your soul has evolved beyond their capacity to match. Either outcome represents your victory. Closing message for part 1. If these words resonated powerfully within you, it's because your intuition already possessed this knowledge. Trust your healing journey completely. Trust the direction you're traveling. Trust the silent resilience you're constructing day by day. Sometimes rejection functions as divine protection. Sometimes loss serves as spiritual redirection. And sometimes their choice to select another person becomes the catalyst that finally teaches you to choose yourself first. And that realization transforms everything permanently. Part 2. What's unfolding in their reality right now? If you're receiving this message at this precise moment, grasp something essential before we continue. This isn't about maintaining false hope. This concerns exposing absolute truth. Because after choosing someone else, existence doesn't suddenly transform into peaceful serenity. It becomes brutally revealing instead. What's currently happening to them exceeds anything they anticipated experiencing. The silence stopped being comfortable. Initially, relief washed over them completely. They persuaded themselves the correct decision was made. They convinced their rational mind that walking away from you was absolutely necessary for everyone involved. Except silence possesses a peculiar ability to communicate profound truths. During quiet moments, when nobody's watching their performance, when nobody requires impressing, when distractions finally fade away, your energetic imprint returns, not as desperate longing, but as undeniable truth they can't escape. They mentally replay previous conversations repeatedly. They remember the safety they experienced in your presence, how genuine interactions felt between you. Here's what shocks their system. They don't miss you during busy, distracted hours. They miss you when honesty catches them off guard. Their new connection feels hollow inside. This proves difficult for them to admit even during private self-reflection. The person they selected doesn't perceive them with your depth of understanding. They don't comprehend them like you did naturally. They don't challenge their soul's growth the way your presence demanded constantly. The laughter registers as superficial and forced. The affection follows predictable patterns without spontaneity. The connection feels fundamentally limited in scope. And they're beginning to notice these deficiencies clearly. Not because the other person possesses flaws or inadequacies, but because the bond lacks profound depth entirely. You awakened portions of their being that cannot return to dormancy now. Every interaction with their current partner reminds them of what's conspicuously missing from the equation. Regret doesn't announce its arrival. Dramatically, regret doesn't initially manifest as tears streaming down faces. It appears as persistent irritation, uncomfortable restlessness, emotional disconnection from present circumstances. They experience frustration without identifying the source. They feel detached without understanding from what exactly, until one specific day when realization strikes with devastating clarity. They didn't lose you because of poor timing or unfortunate circumstances. They lost you because fear controlled their choices, and fear always demands payment with accumulated interest later. They're monitoring you from a distance. Even without ever reaching out directly, they wonder about your current state constantly. They contemplate what your life resembles now. They observe when your energy fundamentally shifts, when you stop waiting, when you start choosing yourself over everyone else. Something inside their chest constricts painfully because they recognize you're becoming someone they might never access again. That thought lingers in their consciousness far longer than they wish to acknowledge consciously. The pivotal moment arrives. This detail matters tremendously. A moment eventually comes. Quiet, intensely personal, completely undeniable, when they ask themselves one specific question: did I abandon the only person who would have remained through everything? This question refuses to depart easily from their mind. From this crucial juncture, two distinct paths reveal themselves before them. They remain in their current situation, suppressing truth, gradually becoming emotionally numb to everything. Or they confront their catastrophic error and risk their ego's survival to face the reality of who you've become. Most hesitate here because reaching out requires admitting complete wrongness, and ego despises accepting accountability for mistakes made. What this means for your journey, this component is absolutely critical to understand. Their awakening is not your responsibility to facilitate or manage. Your assignment was loving genuinely, and you fulfilled that role completely. Now your purpose involves growth, healing, becoming stronger than the version of yourself that waited endlessly. Whether they return or vanish permanently, you're stepping into alignment with your highest self. And alignment never chases anything. It attracts what matches its frequency naturally. A quiet warning from the universe. If they come back too late in this process, they'll discover someone dramatically different, someone who no longer accepts uncertainty or confusion, someone who no longer begs for basic clarity, someone who comprehends their inherent worth completely. And that realization, discovering they've lost access to you permanently, is what truly shakes their foundation. Final word for part 2. They chose someone else over you, but existence is teaching them precisely why that choice never brought peace or satisfaction. And you're learning that your value never depended on being selected by anyone. You were always enough exactly as you are. Part 3. If they return, what your soul must decide. If you're hearing this now, pause everything for a moment. Take one deep breath, because this section isn't about them anymore whatsoever. It concerns you, and the truth you're about to hear may permanently change how you perceive this entire connection. Yes, they contemplate returning. Let's be completely honest about their internal process. They've imagined drafting the message, they've rehearsed the apology repeatedly, they've mentally played the scenario where they finally confess, "I made a terrible mistake with you." But imagination feels safe and comfortable. Action feels absolutely terrifying, because returning means facing the version of you they wounded deeply. It means standing before someone who loved them and admitting they failed that love catastrophically. So they wait, they watch, they hesitate. They hope time will somehow soften the harsh truth of what they did. But time accomplishes something else instead. It transforms you completely. What happens if they actually return? If they reach out, it will feel unexpected and understated, not dramatic or cinematic. It will be subtle, a message, a question, an excuse to reconnect and test the waters. Here's what you must understand with absolute clarity. They won't come back because loneliness struck them. They'll come back because they finally understand what they forfeited. But understanding loss doesn't automatically indicate personal growth or change occurred. And this is where your power emerges fully. The test you didn't know was coming. If they return, the universe places a quiet test directly in your hands that only you can answer. Are they coming back to genuinely heal the relationship, or coming back to relieve their personal guilt and discomfort? Love rebuilt without accountability inevitably collapses again under pressure. Words will sound incredibly sincere and moving. Emotion will feel heavy and overwhelming. Nostalgia will attempt pulling you backward toward the past. But your soul will ask one question that changes everything. Are you choosing me now because you want me, or because you fear losing me forever? That question alters the entire dynamic completely, the shocking possibility nobody discusses. Here's the part that surprises most people navigating this situation. By the time they're finally ready, you may not be available anymore, because the version of you that waited, hoped, and hurt is fading away into the past. You're learning genuine peace. You're learning healthy boundaries. You're learning that love never requires self-abandonment or self-betrayal. And sometimes closure isn't a conversation that happens. It's growth that occurs silently. If they never come back, this is not a loss for you whatsoever. This is confirmation. Confirmation that they were part of your awakening journey, not your final destination point. Some people enter our lives to open us up, not to stay permanently. And once their lesson is complete and integrated, their role ends naturally. You didn't lose a soulmate. You completed a soul chapter that needed to close. What your soul wants you to know. You were never meant to beg for clarity or basic honesty. You were never meant to compete for love or attention. You were never meant to be an option among many. The right connection chooses you without fear or hesitation. And whether they return or disappear from your life entirely, you're stepping into a life that no longer waits for someone to decide your worth externally. Final message. This is vitally important. If this message found you at a time when you felt uncertain, heart-heavy, or emotionally exhausted, it's because the universe is reminding you you are not behind schedule. You are not forgotten by life. You are not unlovable in any way. You are becoming who you were always meant to be. And what is meant for you will meet you without confusion, without fear, and without unnecessary delay. If you found value in this message, show your support by hitting that like button for Psychology Wisdom. Your journey is just beginning.